It takes moments like this, what we're facing right now in our reality, to stand up and not be afraid to voice the thing that's been given to us by God, which is our voice. Like, everybody has an opinion. Racism is not new. I mean, I go back, my stance from this thing is I go back biblically 5,000 plus years ago. Racism was in the Bible. Jesus himself he was a victim of racism. You know what I'm saying? And how did he deal with it? He dealt with it through empowering. We got to get out of the reaction mode and get into the response mode. Response is when you drive something forward. React is what they want you to do. They want us to get excited and hit our social media up and start cussing and they want us to take that sensationalized, heightened way of living, so we do nothing about it. Because in 10 days, just like all the other accounts and the occurrences that's happened before, in 10 days, 10 months, 10 years, people will have forgotten about that, as opposed to being empowered by the moment.
What is up, guys? It's been a little bit. I feel like it's been forever, but we just did a podcast.
Yeah, last week, right?
Last week, and it was good.
Yeah,
what I would have done differently in high school.
Hey,
if you're watching with us, say hi. We want to talk to you today. We want to have a conversation. Frank Nemeth, what's up? I love you.
What's up?
But hey, we obviously everybody's pretty much seen. If you haven't seen it, it's because maybe you like erased your social media on accident or something. I don't know. But we're gonna have a conversation about this today. Who you just heard from was my good friend Pastor Reese Jackson. From Margate, Florida, Abundant Life Church. And man, I love Reese. And I thought that was such an amazing take on it. About, man, are we reacting or are we responding? And a lot of people talk, a lot of people post that they disagree with what happened. And I think we can all occur that we disagree with what happened. It was very wrong. But we don't want to just talk. We want to be able to do something. So we're going to kind of chat this out. We've been talking about it the last couple of days, and we want to have a good conversation about it with you. We want to hear some of your feedback, some of your thoughts. Obviously, like, this is a massive conversation that we probably can't have within the next month. There's people that literally give their life to the study of this issue.
That's true.
So we want to talk a little bit about kind of our thoughts, and we want to get into it about just how can we actually move forward and not just, we got to look back a little bit to see the validity of it and how to address it. But I'm much more how do we respond in a proper way to bring health and healing and wholeness. And I think that's probably the most wise thing we can do. So we're going to have candid conversation with you guys, and make sure you talk back with us. We want to talk to you. We love you. Leave a comment. But we're thankful for Reese. And what you can do is you can go I Am Athlete to one of their podcasts. I think they just shot it 2-3 weeks ago. And Reese has a longer point and have a whole conversation. But he was talking about it from the kingdom of God. Josh Bacher, we love you too, bro.
Love you.
Let's talk about it real quick. So also I want to put a parameter to it. We can't speak to racism as a whole because we're both born in upstate New York with the hills and the cows, and it's very rural. I'd say we probably have more of a culture. We have less of a cultural racism and more person-to-person racism issues. And we don't see a ton of it. Not that it's non-existent, but we don't see it.
It's not as in your face.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good way. Go ahead.
Well, we're kind of, because like you said, we've been kind of discussing about this for the past few days. It's very different. The experience is very different compared to down south to up north. It's been like that for forever, for ages, since the beginning of this country. It's down south. It's way more of a cultural, and it's normal for it to be in your face. It's normal to have an everyday interaction in public with people around, and for them to experience a racist moment, and compared to up north, where it could happen, but it's more of a person-to-person based, maybe racial profiling or over the internet or things like that. And so that's why we can't really speak about it from an aspect of someone from down south. Because I have family down south. I talk with people who I know down south, or I've seen videos and people discuss about it from a down south perspective, and I can empathize from an African American standpoint, from a black male standpoint, but I can't say like I've experienced like going to school to a racist school. Like there's black people who go to a school and it's like their teachers are racist, the principal is racist. Right? I couldn't experience that, or maybe work at a job or live in a whole town that's like predominantly
talk about the sundown towns. Yeah, I've never heard of these. So this is crazy.
So that's why I really wanted to do research on a lot of this stuff now, and I started to learn about like these sundown towns. And pretty much what a sundown town is, it's a town or a large area which is predominantly white, and pretty much what they do is it's kind of like how it used to be when racism was open and widely accepted, and pretty much what they do either verbally or physically is they pretty much make it where minorities, people of color can't live there, they can't buy food there, they can't work there or anything like that, and that's how. And I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize like this stuff still happens like today. Like I know like there's racism, there's people still being killed based on racism and all these other things, but I didn't know it was like still at such a huge scale. And there's like these people who are telling that these videos, they're like, yeah, this stuff is like normal. It's like a few miles up the road to another town, that's a sundown town, and since I've lived here, everyone was always like, we don't go there. Or another one, a kid was telling his experience. He was at work, and I think he worked at like one of those like bounce like jumping places, like what's that one called that we went to? Oh frick, I forgot. It's like a whole bunch of trampolines and stuff. I forgot what it's called though.
I don't remember what it's called.
I forgot, but we went like a few summers ago for what you call it. But he worked at like one of those, and he said a family came in, and I forgot exactly what they said to him, but pretty much, said a racial slur, and, pretty much said how, he shouldn't be around here, shouldn't be working here. And he said he looked up, the town from where he was working, and it came down listed as a sundown.
Skyland. No, Sky Zone.
Sky Zone, yeah, Sky Zone.
You're close, man.
So it's kind of like that. So I was like, wow. And I was like, it's, it kind of, it brings you, now it takes you to another level of like, okay, you kind of start to see more of like how racism is dealt with compared to up north, because like that stuff really isn't tolerated up here like that. Someone couldn't come into a job and be like say something like that and people would be cool with it. You can't you don't really see it like that. That's why it's it's a very different dynamic.
Yeah, and Frank, he said my thought is the officer elevated the situation and didn't need to go to that place. 100% that the other officers were cowards and people are showing their displeasure. Yes, 100%. Looting, we won't get into that. We don't have time for all that. Yeah. There should be accountability for their actions, and I agree. And I think there's like a moment where like, yes, you have to actually like speak up and say something. But again, I don't want to be a person that just says something. I want to be a person that can do something.
Yeah.
So we've been talking about like, I don't want to just make a Facebook post and then 10 days later you forget about it and life is normal.
Yeah, I've never been a big fan of that because I don't like when people try to use like like, oh look, here's my my white friend who says they hate racism. All right, that's awesome, but like where are we getting with it? Like that's not what we need. It's cool, that stuff is important and it's awesome that we discuss on those topics. But I'd rather have someone who doesn't just shoot out right out the gate after they see a video and creates a long rant on how they hate this and that. I'd rather have to do, like for you as an example, you put me and other people on your team who are African American on your team, and you texted it to like, hey, I don't want you guys to feel like I'm just silent in this time, and I want you guys to, let me know, is my voice valued? Is, what can I do to better help these situations? What can I do to be more aware of things like that? That stuff is more important because now there's steps and measures that we can take, and then eventually when you or anyone else makes a post, now it's not from a standpoint that after I just seen this video and I'm outraged and I'm just gonna say whatever.
Yeah.
But now I can take it from not a clouded mind, and I discuss with other people who are affected by this, other, African Americans who are affected by this, and now I can, make a point, and now I can see progress into where.
Yeah, because that's a reaction. We want to give responses. I love how Reese said that. Man, go follow Reese. Just shout out Reese. Go follow Reese. I love Reese.
He's awesome.
But here's the deal, like, obviously there's reasons that we are where we are.
Yeah.
We can both agree, like, I don't think racism will ever end until Jesus returns, sets up his reign again, and things are back how he designed them, because really racism comes from hate comes from sin. Sin's not going to be eradicated, and as much as we hate racism, and as wrong as hating someone for the color of their skin is, I don't know if we'll ever actually be able to completely eradicate that with the option of sin and sin still prevalent.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a real opportunity.
Yeah.
So we can't just be like, end racism.
Yeah.
And that's like the banner. Like, we should end racism.
Yeah.
Period. But first, like, how do we get to here? Because in reality, like, I think a lot of our generation is quite far removed from generations before us, which is very healthy. That's super encouraging. I really love that. Especially in our area. I think that's great. Like, the root is sin, period.
Yeah.
The root is sin. And the farther we get away from slavery, and the farther we get away from all rights being given to human beings, civil rights movement, I think the better it will become. Yeah. But I don't want to just hope and wait and cross my fingers as time comes. Let's drive this truck, man. Let's run it forward, because it's foolishness and it's wrong. Yeah. And one of the I think, and what we've talked about, is a lot of it kind of comes from some narratives that we've allowed the media to create.
Yeah.
And I think that it's time we actually start raising our voice against the media. And I love that, like, some even like African American produced or black produced movies, they go against the normal narratives.
Yeah, and that's why I love
what we need.
Yeah, for like example, it's Jordan Peele. Yeah, Jordan Peele. He's like, he's like, why are we always casted as, the thug, or, the crackhead, or the slave that needs to be saved? We can be casted as, a police officer. We can be casted as a firefighter. We can be casted as a lawyer or a doctor or whatever.
A CEO. It doesn't matter. A good stay-at-home mom.
Exactly. And not only can we be casted as that, but you can be casted as that. And the reason are you casted as that has nothing to do with just because you're black.
Right. Well, even the narratives that are often used are like, hey, like you said, if you're a thug, then it's more predominantly than not going to be a black guy. And they're going to, like, put a bunch of tattoos and a bandana. It's like, are we past that yet? Like, can we stop being okay with them just casting what the prejudice already is? Because it's a narrative that honestly is damning to an entire portion of America and our world, because it's painting a picture that's not the truth and the reality. You can't just say, hey, because you're black, you're a thief. That is one of the most ignorant things you could say. And just because you're white, it means you're going to be CEO. Yeah, exactly. It's foolishness. Exactly. But, like, we keep going to the movie. We keep renting the movie now. We keep running it on Netflix and Amazon Prime. Yeah. And we're okay with it. But there's got to be a certain point where they're like, hey, until these things start shifting and changing, like, I'm kind of over it. Like, I know plenty of white guys that have robbed places. I know plenty of white people that have done meth. I know plenty, like, it's not a particular portion on just skin color. It's who they are at their very core and the decisions they make. And that's not driven because of the color they are. Yeah. But we've accepted that narrative from Hollywood. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that's really painted a picture in our minds. Because if that's what we see, like, I think they say the average person consumes like over 3 to 4 hours of like television type content a day. So imagine, man, you're putting in a part-time hours in TV into your brain, and all you're putting in is narratives and prejudices.
And I think another angle what's so upsetting is about that is that then it creates this image of what you're supposed to be if you're black or what you're supposed to be if you're white.
Oh my gosh, right?
Hispanic. Like, I was we were discussing with me, Mo, and Pat Shore, we were discussing about it, and he was asking us about it. And I was like, it's upsetting because, it's upsetting because there's a narrative that's created what you're supposed to be if you're black. Now, if there's a black, male or female who maybe didn't grow up in, the hood, who grew up in a suburb, who grew up in a nice area, and then, they're more acclimated to that culture in that area, then they're deemed and looked at, well, you're not black. Because you don't act this way or you don't talk this way. Well, you can't put a staple or a stamp on it. Yeah, it's equally ignorant. Or, the same way if it's a white person. If a white person grew up, I know tons of white people that grew up in the hood and act similar to us, but they're not trying to act. There are people, but they're not trying to act, a color. That's just where they grew up, and that's the culture that they grew up in. And then they look at, well, why are you trying to act black? Why don't you act white? Why don't you talk like this? Why don't you talk like that? So that's why, media and movies and everything like that, where they paint this image, is so upsetting.
That would be like a whole nother interesting conversation, is like, what's the collide of like color and culture?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we let people like live in the cultures they have and not just think it's because of a color they are?
Exactly.
Think about it. Like I had one guy. I got so mad at him, man. I was asked, and this was like really cool. I was asked to be on a board. It was like an economic recovery, or like what do you call it when you like put a bunch of money into something? A stimulus, an economic stimulus plan for Elmira that we would present to the governor, which is crazy cool. Like I got to sit there and give suggestions. Cool. And I went up to this guy who I know is like a part of, he grew up in the poverty community, and he's a black man.
Yeah.
And I came up, I was like, you know who it is. I think we talked about this before.
Yeah.
I was like, hey bro, I got this amazing opportunity, and we had like a decent relationship. I have this amazing opportunity to present ideas to the governor, and I wanted your opinion because I think you have a good opinion, and it would have been cool for you to be invited too. And he goes on a lecture about how, because I'm white, I couldn't understand what people in a poverty culture need. When in reality, like the poorest like demographic in our area is white. Is white. Yeah. But it was just like dude, come on, like, but that's your mindset on it.
But also, you don't need to fully understand to help, and you don't need to, you don't need to fully understand, to help. Like for instance, when you first met me or Matt, any of the courts kids in the area, if you don't know what it is, like I live in, a pretty much an apartment complex type thing where it's called the courts. And, when they started running buses there, it's predominantly black kids that live there. And they bus predominantly black kids. He didn't fully understand, what we grew up in and where we live for you to...
and even like most of my it's so funny. Most of my friends growing up were black, but they were like some of my closest friends, like junior, senior year of high school, like it was like with a black family, like that's one of my closest people growing up.
Exactly.
But it was crazy because they were a middle class family, and now seeing like a poverty level, and then white kids, black kids poverty. It's just it's more cultural than it is color, 100%. At least where we are, and that's like still caveat, like asterisk by our whole conversation. This is based on where we are, and I think the narratives of what we see paint these ridiculously, insanely hurtful images and pictures of people that need to be addressed by Hollywood, by the media, by even music, and that's not like a popular thing to bring up.
Yeah, it's true. That's very true. And that's why I've never. Yeah, it's very upsetting because when people hear the music and then they see you, like, I grew up in the hood, the quote unquote hood, but my mom was like extra was heavy on making sure we never experienced like what she experienced when she was a kid. Not that we didn't know what it was or we weren't, we were hidden from it, but she made sure like we never experienced that stuff. She made sure we was never around just anybody. She made sure not anyone just walked up in the house that we didn't know whenever we wanted.
Yeah.
And that's so important. But a narrative can be created, with, like the glorification of like gang culture. Someone can see me and they could expect that I know about all that stuff. And I know about it, but it wasn't an everyday part of my life.
Yeah. And so like narratives are a massive one that they come from. Also like when we take a one-off experience and account that for everybody of that color. Like, that would be so foolish, right?
Yeah.
Like, you get in a fight with somebody in high school, and let's say they're a Hispanic. You're like, I hate all Hispanic people.
Yeah, that's so.
Because I got in a fight with this one Hispanic guy, and he was a jerk.
Yeah, that's so.
Or like, all the Hispanic kids in my high school growing up picked on me, therefore I hate all Hispanics. Like, well, that's stupid. That's a small sample size of an entire portion of our world.
Yeah.
And I think really, like, we need to make decisions to not look at colors, but really give every single person a shot. And not that we're color blind. I think that is also not wise.
Yeah.
But I'm not looking at your color first. I'm looking at, man, you're created in the image of God.
Exactly.
And if you're created in the image of God,
Yeah.
and I know the word,
Yeah.
then I have to treat you a certain way, and I get to treat you a certain way. It doesn't matter. Jasmine,
Exactly.
Dodd, we love you guys.
We love
I texted your husband the other day about conference. We made some big changes, and I wanted you guys to see it before anybody else took up all the tickets.
Yeah.
But I think it's important. So, like, okay, one-off experiences and narratives, massive.
Yeah.
They need to be addressed, and we as people need to take a stand against it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, while I say that, I don't completely even know what my next action steps are.
Yeah.
I want to have more conversations, and I want to bring more people to the conversation, but I think we need to give language to this generation.
That's
Like, if we can give
So
language to this generation, and we can give simple yeses and nos that are like, not like, hey, here's my 38-piece laundry list that I have to do anytime I see a black person, or anytime a black person sees a Japanese person, or like, but just some simple, like, truths to live by. That would be a game changer. So we're gonna work on that. And honestly, like, we're still praying through, like, what do we do?
Yeah.
You know, what do we do? And Buddy's not the only person on the team, but
Yeah.
he's here every day and he spends a lot of time with me. So, but really praying about that, because we can really say, like, any injustice is wrong, and believers of Jesus are here to help eradicate all injustices.
Yeah.
And is just the George Floyd thing the only injustice? No, it's massive.
Massive.
And also the injustices that we see, like, the question's like, man, imagine what's not caught on video. Imagine how long it's been going on. Imagine just so many people are just now seeing what's only been able to be talked about before social media.
Yep.
And now we're getting an image of some of these backdoor things that are really ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to be people that help give language and simple directive, because it's disgusting and we're wrong with it. We're done with it because it's wrong.
Yeah.
So, man, if you have ideas, tell us. Let us know. We want to help bring healing, not just to our nation, but to our generation. Because honestly, like, racism in America, racism anywhere is bad. Okay, let me preface my statement with that.
Yeah.
Racism anywhere is bad,
Anywhere.
but our world really needs help. You know that there's actually, like, there's real life slaves in Qatar and Ghana right now.
Yep.
No, legitimately.
Legit.
There's
we're
real
actual
life,
slaves.
like, slavery right now. There's actually, I believe, more people enslaved right now than any other time in history.
Yeah. Even in America with sex trafficking.
Yeah, sex trafficking, but I mean, like, work slaves.
Yeah.
Like, check that out. Like, it's in Qatar, it's in Ghana. I believe, I heard somebody say it, and I didn't fact check it yet, but they're building the World Cup stadium right now based on slave labor.
That's wild.
If slave labor is building the World Cup,
That's
like, stadium, we should 100% support the World Cup in zero way.
Yeah.
Like, we speak with our money. Like, this generation, you want to know how your voice is heard? Your dollars.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the greatest ways to force the media, Hollywood, any of these other places that are profiting from slavery or injustice, is put your money where your mouth is. If you really are about it, put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Don't give them your money.
support it. Yeah.
Don't give them your money. They're not gonna keep doing what they're doing.
It's very true.
Even look at, like, in China, they're taking Muslims and they're putting them in real life concentration camps.
Yeah, that's so sad.
Like, there's real life injustices all over our
All
world.
over.
And while America does have injustice and there's racial issues, I believe we're a lot farther ahead than many places, but it's not good enough.
Yeah.
Right? It'll never be good enough.
Yeah, I agree.
until Jesus comes back and sin is eradicated and this world is reset on how he's going to reset, it's never enough. But we want to get it. We want to ram that truck home.
Yeah.
So, all right, buddy, I've talked a lot. Do you have any more thoughts before we go into some Bible on this?
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree with what you said. And to just go back quickly to what you said about, I don't know if you used the exact word, but when people, just like being like colorblind. And I like to say, it's twofold. And is that when you see someone, you shouldn't look directly at them and only acknowledge them for their color.
Yeah.
But you should also, not just throw it away. Because like when you see me, you don't only make your choices and do stuff because I'm black. But you also acknowledge, like, when you see I wear do-rags, okay, I wear do-rags because I'm a black male.
The one is
or,
ugly.
I don't care
what
you say.
The one is ugly. It looks like Nick
do-rag
got
is fire.
shot on his do-rag.
Do-rag is fire. Anyways, but you acknowledge, you acknowledge those things. You acknowledge, some of my cultural things because I'm a black male. But you don't make the decision solely because, well, he's black, so I'm going to do this. He's black, so I'm going to put him in this position.
Yeah, that'd be
wrong, extremely wrong.
You imagine realizing you only got a position, you're like, oh yeah, it's just because you're black.
Yeah, that would be
what?
Okay. So like, if you're watching this and you have a struggle, you don't solely look at someone, either black, white, Asian, whatever it may be. Don't solely look at them that, but also respect that they are black, they are white, they are Asian, they are Hispanic, whatever.
Yeah.
Actually, it was actually a quote that Miles McPherson said. He's like, you can be racially offensive and not be racist. A lot of people were like, well, I'm not racist, yeah, but that is a way that you can be offensive, racially offensive.
Right, and I think a lot of those are birthed just from like ignorances.
Oh yeah, also true.
And not all ignorance is evil.
Yeah,
evil.
no,
like on one hand, I think we should give people on a small level a benefit of doubt, where you check them, be like, what do you mean by that?
There's definitely been,
and let them clarify.
There's definitely been times where I gave people the benefit of doubt, and they're like, no, I didn't mean it like that. Which you can tell if people have malicious intent or not.
Yeah, so I mean, there's that, but like, is racism okay? No. You're an absolute fool.
Yeah.
You're like, go climb under a rock.
Yeah.
Shut your mouth. Like, do something. Like, go away. Is injustice ever okay? No. Does the church need to lead in conversations like this? Yes, because I think Jesus led in this. Mm-hmm. If you think about John chapter 4, he shows up to a well, and there's a woman at the well, and at this well, she was a Samaritan woman. So not only was Jesus not supposed to talk to women, but he was also supposed to hate Samaritans because he was Jewish. And he went and he talked to her. Not only did he talk to her, but he told her all of her problems, prophesied, told her about herself. And she's like, oh my gosh, I found the Messiah. You got to come find this prophet, this Messiah who I found. And there was healing in her personal life of sleeping around. Whoops. Because Jesus was willing to cross racial and gender barriers. Because he realized she needed a savior. Mm-hmm. And I think if color or gender ever get in the way of you seeing them how Jesus sees them in their need, then that's the biggest thing. Capri just said, how do you stop ignorance? You need to allow the questions to be asked, talk about it in a safe place with the right intentions of learning and not casting judgment. And honestly, that's what we've done the last 2 days.
Yeah.
Like, we've had some really good conversations. I probably said some things. I didn't really say anything offensive, but I think a lot of people don't know where to ask their questions.
Yeah.
And if we can provide a space to ask their questions, then we can bring clarity.
Yeah.
And it's so intricate.
It is.
But okay, woman at the well. Jesus crosses barriers. Good Samaritan. Samaritan man. Jewish man, Samaritan man should have left him there to die. Yeah. Right? What's up, Max Little? What's up, Kayla Keegan? He should have left him there to die. He doesn't. He crosses a racial barrier. Yeah. Right? And I believe that we're called as believers to, anytime we see oppression, anytime we see injustice, anytime we see things that are outside of how God's kingdom should operate, that we shouldn't be mute.
Yeah.
I'm going to read this verse and then we'll talk about that. Isaiah 1:17. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Correct oppression. Bring justice to the fatherless. And plead the widow's cause. Those first two right there. Seek justice and correct oppression. Seek justice and correct oppression. Even like, I love that. I love that.
Flat out.
Seek justice.
Flat out, right there. It didn't say, just seek justice, correct oppression. Flat out, boom, right there.
That's a command of God. That's a command. It's not an option. It says learn to do good, and then it's like a semicolon thing. I'm not good at English, the English language. Seek justice and correct oppression. And what I love too about, I don't love about oppression, but what I love God's response to oppression is in Exodus 3. Ben Evanson, I love you, bro. Call me soon. In Exodus 3, we know that God's people were in slavery, and they start to cry out to him. He says, hey, I've seen your oppression.
Yeah.
I've seen your affliction. Like God sees it, and as Christians, I don't think we should turn a blind eye to it.
Yeah, it's true.
I don't think we should ever turn a blind eye to it.
No, in any aspect.
And we need to get loud about what's wrong. We can't just be like in our own little playground pretending that the world's not on fire in certain areas.
Literally.
And now's the moment. Like the church should look like the kingdom. The church should look like heaven looks. Like, man, it's going to be full of Chinese people.
Multicultural.
Full of Brazilians.
Multicultural.
Full of Africans.
country,
South Koreans. Everybody, everywhere, everything. And that's what our church should look like. Period. Miles McPherson wrote this like really phenomenal book. It's called The Third Option. If you're a believer, I think you should read it, or I listened to it. And I don't agree with everything he says, but I did love that he said, like, his crux of the book was this. He said, choose to honor. Like, the third option, it's not to turn a blind eye. It's not to, it's to choose honor. And that's a personal choice we all have. Like, I have a choice to honor anybody I come in contact with. Buddy has a choice to honor. You have a choice to honor every single person you come in contact with.
I fully agree. And actually, and I think this is so dope. I watched this video last night, and I think this was maybe a few odd years ago, but they were having like this. There was like this white supremacist like KKK rally like going on down south, and there was other protesters like coming obviously against it, stuff like that. And this black dude, dreads, went over to this white supremacist guy and just looked at him and was like, "Why do you hate me?" And now it's like everyone's sitting there just like, and they're expecting like, whatever, them to both just throw both sides, throw words back and forth and even fight and things like that. And that's what they're expecting. But the guy's just like, why do you hate me? And then the white supremacist dude, he's like, I don't know. And he was like, can I just get a hug? And they, in the midst of a KKK rally, white supremacist rally, white supremacist black dude with dread just hug it out. And that's why it's so important, is that we can look at the face of racism, and we have options. We can either look at it and just be like, whatever, rah, like, I hate everyone, I hate the world, I hate all, this generic category of people, or we can attack it and say, how can we come together and unify and really see this, change, and that's through honoring one another.
Yeah, I mean, like, hate. We can all like, if you have a brain, and especially if you're a believer of Jesus, like, hate is never the proper response, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's never going to actually produce a realistic result.
Yeah.
Like, a response of hate, what it's going to do is just going to propagate more hate and more division, and that's not what we want. That's not what we need. And that's not what we're here for. Hey, your mom just hopped on.
What up, Mom?
Hey, he spoke great things about you a couple minutes ago. You got to rewind it in a couple minutes and watch. But like, hate's always just going to produce more hate and drive a wedge. And I want to be a person that helps bring solutions and a right response. Because I hate racism. I think it's one of the absolute dumbest things period. Like, cut any of us open, we're the same exact.
Well, and what's crazy is I seen this video. I just get all this stuff. Yo, shameless plug, but I've learned so much from TikTok. I've learned so much from TikTok. So much, and it's helped me so much. But I watched the video, and so filmmakers, when they film and create movies and stuff like that, and when they want to make the film a certain type of way, like the colors a certain type of way, how films like they all have like consistent colors.
Yeah.
They don't have to change the hue on skin tone, because all skin tone is just a shade of orange. It's either super light or super dark.
Wow.
And they never have to change the hue. It's only
unless you're Ben and you make people green.
Yeah, unless you're Ben and you make people green. So like even if you go on like I have an app called Adobe Lightroom, and you can change like specific colors. If you go on black, white, any shade color, and you move the orange, it only changes, obviously, unless you have orange in there. But
it would probably change. I'm pretty pasty. It might change me right now.
It could change, and all humans are just the same hue of orange, just a little bit darker or a little bit lighter.
Huh, that's interesting. Actually, in the book, Third Option from Miles McPherson, I forget the exact number, but I think he said like we are 99 point. Oh man, I want to say like 7 or 0.5. Maybe 0.1, even no matter what. Like, let's say 99.1% the same.
Yeah.
So
I think it's 7. I think it's 99.
Okay, that's right. So we have a 0.3 difference at all.
Yeah.
It's crazy because really, I think what people have confused with racism is a cultural disdain, which is also wrong. Like, it's also wrong to hate anything. Any culture that's attached to a person, it's wrong.
Incredibly wrong.
But at the end of the day, like, we're more the same than we're insanely the same more than we are different.
Yep.
So like we need to choose honor. And I think we also need to realize John 13:35 says, "And by your love for one another, you'll show the world you're my disciples." If you're a Christian right here, it's by your love for one another, and loving somebody else isn't being silent. Loving one another isn't sitting back. Loving is action.
Yeah.
And I think like if you've never had a conversation about race with someone of a different color, you should have the conversation and just shut up and listen.
Yeah. Just
be quiet and listen to what they have to say. And then you can learn how to actually love them by their experiences. Because everyone's life experience is different.
Yeah.
You know, like every single person's life experience is different, and when we can be quiet and listen, we can actually like learn how to truly love people and what their needs are. It's very important.
It is. I fully agree with that point. Like if you are friends, even family members, whatever, with someone of a different color, take time, whatever, go sit, get coffee, even FaceTime, whatever, and have that conversation. Don't be scared of that conversation, because it's really what's gonna help. And people, ask like, what can we do? How can we help? Have these conversations. Sit down with somebody at both sides, and this is why like I'm so happy that. One of my closest friends, like my brother Cole, we're complete opposites. We grew up in completely two different homes. He grew up in, the suburbs with, 2 parents in the home. I grew up in a single parent home and, in an apartment. 2 completely different people, but, we're the closest. Blood couldn't make us closer. But that's because we were able to sit down and have these conversations. I remember we've sat down and we had talks on like politics and stuff like that. We one time we were hanging out and we were talking about politics, and it got a little heated and whatever, and we stopped and we were like, but bro, just know I love you. And he was like, yeah, bro, just know I love you too. I don't care about any of this. I don't care about your views or no, he wasn't like, he was like, I don't care if your views are different or anything like that. And he was like, I still love you. And it was because we were able to sit down, and I was able to, and that even helped me out a lot, because, I was able to translate from
really good.
why I believe in what I believe in, based on from my experience and who I grew up around. Then he was able to tell me, he was like, well, from my perspective, I grew up in this way, and he was like, my parents are business people, and this affects me this way. And I was like, dang, I never knew that.
And
I never
that's
knew that.
huge, right? Like, I wish people would listen more. That would be that'd be a very honorable thing to do. Is just to listen. Because there's two sides to every coin, and what you'll often find is most people are fighting for the same thing.
Yeah. They
just see it from a different angle.
Yep.
And if you could learn their angle, you can act like I listened to another book. It's called Why Are We Yelling? And most people when they're in an argument, they're just screaming their point at the other person, right? And they're not actually like listening to respond. They're just screaming their point. Like, you ever notice when you get in a Facebook argument that they never actually really respond to what you say? They just post another book with their own point. Yeah. Like, it's super annoying, right?
Or wild when, you see a Facebook argument and then they get down to it and they're like, oh, well, we're actually, like, agreeing.
Yeah, it's so crazy. But, like, real conversation is actually allowing somebody to talk, processing, and then having like something to add or clarifying question.
Yeah.
So like even like if you've noticed how I've approached our conversations about this week have been like, hey, how do you feel about this thought?
Yeah.
And why would you feel about this thought? And hey, I was given this a little bit of thought and maybe it's too far, but tell me your perspective on it. And that's like I don't know too many people that are going to get angry about, hey, here's a random thought. Not a random, but I've been thinking about this and I'm not sure.
Yeah.
What's your perspective?
Yeah.
And then once they say their perspective, take like the 1 to 3 key words and repeat it to them and let them keep talking.
Yeah.
And you'll find out so much about their perspective. And what it will do is it's going to bring you together instead of rip us apart.
Yeah.
And I think that's really like the saddest thing I'm seeing right now. Is a lot of people are being ripped apart. Like we've seen a couple people, and we talked about it, where they're like, screw everybody of this color, blah 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 blah, and it's driving divisions. That breaks my heart because like, imagine what that's doing to Jesus. Imagine like that's not Jesus didn't die for that.
Yeah, and imagine what can it cause down the line. When terrible. You're having that hatred in your heart, and
hate breeds hate.
Hate breeds hate, and it just creates a cycle because it's taught.
It's true, guys. I want you to throw your thoughts in the comments. We're about wrapping up. Romans 12:5, rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep.
Yeah.
Think like, okay, what do we do right now? Number one, I think we need to speak against silence. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. This man like stood in the face of Nazi Germany and refused to be silent while they were killing off Jews. It was racism.
Wow.
Like literal, like I think it was 6 million Jews they estimate were murdered.
Something like that.
Because of racism. That's straight up racist, anti-Semitic actions. Yeah. He said, "Silence in the face of evil itself is evil. Yeah. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." So one, I think we need to speak. Two, and even more importantly than speaking, I think we need to act. And that's where like we have conversations. We start putting our money where we really believe it.
Yeah.
And then there's more, but I'm not sure what that more is right now.
Yeah.
I don't think it's another event.
No, and I think what's awesome is that the more things are talked about, the more things are understood and conversated about, then those next steps, like, oh, well, what about this? What if we do this? And that's why it's important.
Yes,
this is, the start is having these conversations, understanding the cultural differences and realize, getting through the cultural barriers between people. And then you can start to realize, okay, this is the next step that we can take.
Yeah, and that's big, and I want to get there.
Yeah.
I want to get there because I want to bring our generation as close as we can to an eradication of racism and injustice.
Yeah.
And this is purely from like a northeast perspective in a rural town and what we've seen. And I think number 3, we need to like weep with those who weep. Man, there's people and like white people are funny. Often they're like, "Why are you so angry and upset?" Man, you don't know some of the experiences that people have been through and how it makes them think like, man, that could have been me, and I think that might be the scariest thing. Is like that could have,
Yeah.
and it propels a fear of a future what if.
Yeah.
I don't want people to have to live with a what if.
No. Yeah. It's and that's so true. You know, you don't. Yeah. I fully agree. You know, it's okay to when you know, that's why I go back to like you don't have to fully understand. And one, you know, both parties have to realize that, you know, you don't have to expect them to fully understand, and you don't have to be like, well, I can't really sympathize with you because I don't fully understand. You know, you can still be in that area of comfort. You know, for like example,
That's a stupid argument.
for like a example, you know, like when my grandmother passed away. You know, not everyone had a grandmother that passed away.
Yeah.
Not everyone, you know, understood how that felt, but they understand I was in the time of mourning and they could, you know, mourn with me. You know,
Yeah.
I remember I went to, you know, with Isaiah, and he would just literally let me sit on his couch and just cry.
Yeah.
And he couldn't, and it wasn't like he was like, yeah, man, like my grandma passed away, and I understand how it feels, nothing like that. And he was able to sit there and mourn, and that's what you can do. Is in the times when you might not fully know how that feels and how it impacts you specifically, or maybe not feeling effects for it, you can still, you know, weep with those who are weeping.
Yeah, I think like there's a extreme power of presence, like just being there
Just
and
being
people
there.
knowing you're being there. Like my text to a couple like our guys, where it was just like, yo, if you ever like need it, I'm here.
Yeah.
Period. You ever feel like you're in that situation, let me know.
Yeah.
Because we're not scared.
Yeah.
We're down. Whatever
Exactly.
it is, we're there.
Exactly.
And knowing someone's in your corner in anything is huge. I can't imagine this as well. Do you have anything to add to our 3 walk away from points right now? Put stuff in the comments. You got other thoughts, other action points? Drop them in the comments for us.
Yeah, I think those are
That's a
3 great. Those
start
are
point,
solid.
though. That's a start. That's not.
Those are solid. And you know, and this is not just a final list. Like, you know, these, you know, 3 simple ways, and then you're good. No, this is
Erase
a start.
Erase racism.
Yeah,
These 3 steps.
simple ways.
No.
No. You know, but these are huge steps that you can take, and you know, I fully believe that these 3 will help produce more ways to, you know, start to see a change.
Yeah, 100%. And I think what Reese said, and I'm going to play that video one more time, is we need to be people who respond and not just react in anger and get loud and then we forget in 8 to 10 days.
Yeah.
Like, let's actually respond to the situation.
Yeah.
Therefore, there can be change in the future. Watch this 1-minute clip, and then we're out. Look, we love you guys.
We love you guys.
Upper Conference, massive change we just announced the other day.
Yeah.
We're coming back to the church.
Back to the church. I'm excited.
Because, and it's like, no, we don't have budget problems.
No.
The reality is, I don't know what New York State is doing.
Yeah.
And I don't want 2 weeks before to be like, oh, shoot, we have to go back to the church. You know what? No, we're going back to the church, and those who want to be here are going to register. We have less than 500 tickets left. I had youth pastor text me just while we're sitting here. It's like, hey, I'm registering more kids today. Like, yo, don't miss out. Like, it's going to sell out. It's free. It's going to sell out.
Yeah.
And you should register now so you don't miss it.
Yeah.
But we're going to play this 1-minute clip, theuproar.org. We love you guys. And if you want to add your voice to the conversation, message us, let us know. Because, man, we want to see this shift.
Yeah.
It takes moments like this, what we're facing right now in our reality, to stand up and not be afraid to voice the thing that's been given to us by God, which is our voice. Like, everybody has an opinion. Racism is not new. I mean, I go back, my stance from this thing is I go back biblically 5,000 plus years ago. Racism was in the Bible. Jesus himself was a victim of racism. You know what I'm saying? And how did he deal with it? He dealt with it through empowering. We got to get out of the reaction mode and get into the response mode. Response is when you drive something forward. React is what they want you to do. They want us to get excited and hit our social media up and start cussing and they want us to take that sensationalized, heightened way of living, so we do nothing about it. Because in 10 days, just like all the other accounts and the occurrences that's happened before, in 10 days, 10 months, 10 years, people will have forgotten about that, as opposed to being empowered by the moment.